19 black gay celebrities who died tragically from illness. They changed music, film, fashion, and culture, but when illness arrived, many of them faced it in silence. Behind awards, applause, and historic firsts were lives shaped by fear, judgment, and a lack of protection. These were not just celebrities. They were human beings navigating fame in a world that often refused to see their full truth. Tonight's stories are not meant to comfort you. They're meant to challenge what we remember and what we choose to ignore. Watch closely and ask yourself, has society truly learned from these losses? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the discussion on legends of black fame. Little Richard. Little Richard was not merely a performer, he was a force that altered the direction of modern music. Long before rock and roll became a global phenomenon, Richard Wayne Penniman injected it with speed, volume, flamboyance, and unfiltered energy. His explosive piano playing, piercing vocals, and theatrical presence laid the foundation for artists who would later dominate popular culture, including the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and Elton John. Without Little Richard rock, history would sound very different. Rising from Macon, Georgia, in the early 1950s, he entered an industry deeply shaped by racial segregation and moral conservatism. His breakthrough song, Tutti Frutti, did more than top charts. It shattered expectations. On stage, he embodied freedom, yet offstage, he lived under constant pressure to conform. As a black man whose gender expression and attraction defied social norms, Little Richard existed in a contradiction, celebrated for his art while scrutinized for his identity. Throughout his career, he wrestled publicly with religion and self-acceptance. At various points, he stepped away from music, believing fame conflicted with faith. These departures were not failures, but reflections of a man navigating a world that offered success without safety. Despite internal conflict, his influence never faded. He returned repeatedly, each time reaffirming his role as a pioneer rather than a relic. In his later years, Little Richard spoke more openly about authenticity, acknowledging the complexity of his journey without rewriting it for comfort. His final chapter was shaped not by scandal, but by illness. Diagnosed with bone cancer, he faced declining health with the same resilience that defined his career. In 2020, he passed away at the age of 87. Little Richard's legacy cannot be confined to music charts or fashion choices. He expanded the boundaries of expression at a time when deviation carried real consequences. His life illustrates the cost of being first, the innovation, the isolation, and the endurance required to survive both. Remembering Little Richard truthfully means recognizing not only what he created, but what he endured to create it. Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross mastered the art of emotional precision. His voice did not overpower, it enveloped. Emerging from New York's musical landscape, he first built credibility behind the scenes, arranging and singing background vocals for major artists before stepping into prominence himself. When his solo career launched in the early 1980s, it reshaped contemporary R&B by prioritizing vulnerability over bravado. Commercial success followed quickly. Vandross released albums that dominated adult R&B radio, accumulated 8 Grammy Awards, and sold more than 40 million records worldwide. His concerts were defined by control rather than spectacle, each phrase carefully shaped, each lyric delivered with restraint that heightened its impact. Audiences felt addressed personally, as if his performances were private conversations held in public spaces. Yet the clarity of his musical expression contrasted with guarded personal boundaries. Vandross lived during a period when public disclosure of sexuality could derail careers, particularly for black male vocalists marketed as romantic ideals. He chose discretion, focusing entirely on craft, while deflecting speculation. That decision allowed longevity, but carried emotional cost. Health challenges gradually altered his trajectory. Long-standing struggles with diabetes and weight management intensified over time. In 2003, a severe stroke left him hospitalized and permanently affected his ability to perform. Rehabilitation was lengthy and difficult, and although he made limited public appearances afterward, the voice that defined his career never fully returned. Luther Vandross died in 2005 at the age of 54. His legacy rests not on mystery, but on mastery. He expanded how love songs could sound measured, tender, and deliberate. Vandross proved that emotional depth could achieve mainstream success without theatrical excess. His recordings remain reference points for vocalists studying control phrasing and sincerity. Luther Vandross did not chase visibility. He pursued excellence, and through that commitment, he left behind a catalog that continues to articulate feelings many struggle to name. Sylvester James Jr. approached performance as declaration. Every appearance, every note, every costume challenged conventions surrounding gender sound and presence. Rising from Los Angeles and flourishing within San Francisco's creative underground, he transformed disco into a platform for self-definition rather than escapism. His falsetto carried urgency and brightness, cutting through crowded dance floors with unmistakable identity. Tracks like You Make Me Feel Mighty Real were not merely popular, they were affirmations signaling belonging to audiences who rarely saw themselves reflected elsewhere. Sylvester did not soften edges to gain acceptance, he expanded them. As musical trends shifted in the early 1980s, he continued creating, remixing, and collaborating, refusing to abandon experimentation. During this period, he openly embraced his sexuality, a choice that reinforced his bond with LGBTQ+ communities, even as broader public support remained inconsistent. When HIV emerged as a devastating force, Sylvester confronted it without retreat. Diagnosed in 1986, he remained active in performance and advocacy, participating in benefit events and donating royalties to AIDS-related causes. At a time when fear dominated headlines, his visibility carried weight. His final performances were marked by physical fragility but undiminished resolve. In 1988, he appeared at San Francisco Pride, visibly weakened, yet vocally committed, transforming the stage into a space of collective recognition. Later that year, Sylvester died from AIDS-related complications at the age of 41. Sylvester's influence extends beyond disco archives. He redefined what authenticity could look like under pressure, merging art with identity in ways that continue to inform performance culture. His legacy persists not because of nostalgia, but because courage, once displayed, openly reshapes possibility. Sylvester did not ask permission to exist. He sang himself into history. Nell Carter. Nell Carter's talent arrived fully formed, rich vocals, comic timing, and a warmth that made audiences feel welcome. She rose through Broadway with commanding performances that earned critical acclaim, including a Tony Award, before becoming a familiar presence on American television. On screen, she projected confidence and ease. Off-screen, her life required constant calibration. Carter worked in an industry that demanded marketable images and discouraged complexity. As a black woman, building a career in the late 20th century, she navigated expectations with discipline. Her performances were grounded in craft rather than spectacle, relying on phrasing, timing, and emotional control. That restraint helped sustain a long career across stage and television. Privately, Carter guarded parts of herself that the era was not prepared to accept. She kept her romantic life largely out of public view, choosing stability over exposure. This decision was less about denial than protection, an understanding that professional survival often depended on silence. While audiences saw laughter, the work behind it was relentless. Health challenges gradually reshaped her later years. Carter managed chronic illness, including diabetes, while continuing to perform and maintain professional commitments. Medical complications increased with time, bringing frequent hospitalizations and physical strain. Even so, she remained focused on family and close relationships rather than public narrative. Nell Carter died in 2003 at the age of 54. Her legacy rests on consistency and range. She moved fluidly between comedy and music, stage and screen, without sacrificing credibility in any space. Carter demonstrated that success could be built through reliability and emotional intelligence, not constant reinvention. Remembering her means, recognizing the discipline required to sustain joy as a profession, and the quiet strength it takes to do so without revealing everything. Jackie Mums Mabley. Jackie Mums Mabley mastered survival through wit. Emerging from the vaudeville circuit and the Chitlin circuit, she developed a comedic persona that appeared disarming, an elderly woman offering sharp observations, but beneath it was precision and courage. Her humor confronted racism, hypocrisy, and power with clarity, masked as playfulness. Mabley's timing was surgical. She understood pauses, phrasing, and audience psychology, allowing her to deliver social critique without overt confrontation. This approach earned longevity in spaces where Black performers, particularly women, were rarely granted creative authority. She did not chase trends. She shaped rooms. Off-stage, Mabley lived with realities that demanded discretion. She loved women in a period defined by legal and social hostility towards same-sex relationships. Rather than center her private life publicly, she focused on performance as expression. Comedy became both vocation and refuge. Despite the physical demands of touring well into later life, Mabley continued performing with determination. Health issues, including heart disease, intensified as she aged, yet she remained committed to work. Her final years reflected endurance rather than retreat, a testament to her belief that purpose did not expire with age. Jackie Mums Mabley died in 1975 at the age of 81. Her influence extends across generations of comedians who learned that humor can confront injustice without surrendering warmth. Mabley expanded who could speak on stage and what could be said, using laughter to disarm resistance. She proved that comedy, when wielded with intelligence, can be both shield and instrument, protecting the speaker while challenging the world. Alberta Hunter. Alberta Hunter's career stretched across eras, continents, and cultural shifts, making her one of the most enduring figures in American blues and jazz history. Rising from the early 20th century, she forged a path at a time when opportunities for Black women in entertainment were sharply limited. Her voice carried authority without force, measured, expressive, and deeply grounded in lived experience. Hunter achieved prominence during the Harlem Renaissance, performing in elite venues and recording songs that traveled far beyond the neighborhoods that birthed them. Her work resonated because it balanced restraint with emotional depth. Rather than dramatize sorrow, she allowed it to surface naturally, giving her performances a timeless quality. Offstage, Hunter lived in a world that offered little safety for honesty. Her romantic relationships with women existed within private spaces, protected from public scrutiny. The necessity of concealment was not unique to her, but characteristic of the era, particularly for women whose livelihoods depended on public approval. Hunter chose continuity over confrontation, ensuring her career remained intact, even as parts of her life remained unseen. In midlife, she made an unexpected transition, leaving music to train as a nurse. This decision reflected adaptability rather than retreat. Decades later, in her 70s, Hunter returned to performance with renewed clarity, captivating audiences with maturity rather than novelty. Few artists reclaim relevance so late in life with such grace. Health challenges marked her final years, including leukemia, which ultimately ended her life in 1984 at the age of 89. Alberta Hunter's significance lies not only in longevity, but in control. She navigated shifting cultural landscapes without surrendering autonomy, shaping a life that resisted erasure through persistence. Her recordings remain documents of resilience, proof that quiet endurance can be as revolutionary as defiance. Gladys Bentley. Gladys Bentley transformed the stage into a site of disruption. Emerging during the Harlem Renaissance, she defied expectations through presentation alone, wearing tailored suits, singing bawdy blues, and commanding attention without apology. Her performances unsettled audiences because they challenged assumptions about gender, sexuality, and power simultaneously. Bentley's artistry thrived in nightlife spaces that allowed experimentation, particularly Harlem clubs, where boundaries were momentarily loosened. Her deep voice, playful lyrics, and commanding presence offered audiences both entertainment and provocation. She did not perform subversion quietly. She embodied it. Living openly as a lesbian during the 1920s and 1930s carried consequences. While Bentley achieved popularity, shifting political climates eventually tightened restrictions. As moral conservatism intensified, spaces that once welcomed her expression became dangerous. Surveillance police raids and public pressure curtailed opportunities. Facing professional marginalization, Bentley attempted reinvention. She altered her appearance, claimed conformity, and pursued acceptance within a society that demanded it. These changes were strategic rather than reflective of identity, underscoring the cost of survival when authenticity becomes punishable. Health struggles compounded later hardship. Bentley's condition declined over time, and she died in 1960 at the age of 52. Gladys Bentley's legacy rests on visibility. She demonstrated that performance could articulate identity when language was denied. Though history briefly obscured her contributions, contemporary reassessment recognizes her as a pioneer who expanded expressive possibility. Bentley did not merely entertain, she exposed the fragility of norms by refusing to honor them. Her life remains a testament to courage expressed through presence rather than permission. Billy Preston. Billy Preston's relationship with music began before he could fully understand its power. A child prodigy, raised in a gospel environment, he moved effortlessly from church stages to professional studios, carrying spiritual intensity into every performance. By the time he reached adulthood, Preston had become one of the most versatile musicians of his generation, equally fluent in gospel, soul, funk, and rock. His keyboard work became instantly recognizable, bright, rhythmic, and emotionally direct. Preston collaborated with an extraordinary range of artists, including the Beatles, where his presence helped bridge creative tensions during a pivotal period. Unlike many session musicians, he was credited prominently, signaling how central his contributions were. His solo career flourished as well, producing chart-topping songs and earning multiple Grammy Awards. Despite professional success, Preston's personal life unfolded under constraint. The music industry of his era offered little space for openness regarding sexuality, especially for Black male artists connected to religious traditions. Preston kept much of his private world guarded, turning inward as expectations mounted. Over time, substance abuse became a coping mechanism, complicating both health and stability. In the early 1990s, Preston publicly acknowledged his sexuality and committed to recovery, reconnecting with faith and focusing on gospel music. This period marked a renewed sense of purpose, though physical challenges followed. Kidney disease progressively weakened him, leading to hospitalizations and limiting his ability to perform consistently. Billy Preston died in 2006 at the age of 59. His legacy is layered rather than singular. He stands as a bridge between sacred and secular music, proving that technical skill and emotional honesty could coexist without dilution. Preston's recordings continue to circulate across genres, not as relics, but as living references. His life illustrates how talent can thrive amid contradiction and how reconciliation, even when late, carries meaning beyond career milestones. Frankie Knuckles. Frankie Knuckles shaped music by creating spaces rather than songs alone. As a DJ and producer, he transformed dance floors into communities using rhythm to establish connection where language failed. Emerging from New York's club culture, before finding his defining role in Chicago, Knuckles became the central architect of house music, a genre that would eventually circle the globe. His approach emphasized continuity and atmosphere. Rather than abrupt transitions, Knuckles blended tracks into extended journeys, allowing dancers to remain immersed. This technique redefined DJing as a form of authorship. Clubs like the Warehouse became laboratories where sound evolved organically, driven by response rather than charts. Knuckles' influence extended beyond nightlife. House music offered refuge during a period marked by social tension, particularly for Black and LGBTQ+ communities seeking belonging. While he did not center his identity publicly in early years, his presence helped cultivate inclusive environments where expression was encouraged rather than policed. As the genre gained international recognition, Knuckles remained committed to craft over spectacle. He produced, remixed, and mentored, prioritizing sound quality and emotional resonance. Even as trends shifted, his philosophy remained consistent: music as connection. Health challenges emerged later in life. Complications from diabetes led to serious physical limitations, including reduced mobility. Despite this, Knuckles continued performing and producing, adapting his methods rather than withdrawing. His final years reflected perseverance rather than decline. Frankie Knuckles died in 2014 at the age of 59. Today, his legacy is audible everywhere, from electronic festivals to underground clubs. House music's foundational principles trace directly back to his vision. Frankie Knuckles did not simply influence a genre. He established a framework for how music could gather people into shared experience. His work endures because it was never about fame, it was about feeling. J.D. Steele. J.D. Steele was a defining figure in Minnesota's gospel scene, recognized for vocal leadership and musical direction that emphasized unity and precision. As a singer and choir director, he approached gospel as collective experience, sound built through discipline, collaboration, and emotional intention rather than spectacle. Steele's work flourished within church-centered communities where music functioned as spiritual anchor. He trained voices, arranged harmonies, and cultivated ensembles that reflected both technical excellence and emotional depth. His presence was steady-rooted in service rather than prominence. Later in life, Steele made the decision to live openly as a gay man, an act that carried significant personal consequence within religious contexts. Responses were mixed. While some supporters remained, others withdrew, revealing the limits of acceptance in spaces built on tradition. The resulting isolation reshaped his professional and personal landscape. Despite shifting relationships, Steele did not abandon music. He continued directing choirs and mentoring singers, reframing his role from performer to guide. This transition reflected resilience, a commitment to purpose, even as external validation diminished. Health challenges eventually emerged, including heart failure, which curtailed his activities. Even during illness, Steele remained engaged with music, treating it as practice rather than performance. In 2021, he died at the age of 61. J.D. Steele's story underscores the complexity of faith communities confronting change. He demonstrated that authenticity can require sacrifice and that devotion does not disappear when institutions falter. Steele's influence persists through voices he shaped, proof that legacy can be carried forward quietly without stage lights, sustained by belief rather than approval. Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters changed American entertainment by arriving where she was never expected to stand. Born into poverty at the turn of the 20th century, she rose to prominence through resilience rather than privilege, becoming one of the first Black women to achieve sustained success across blues, jazz, Broadway, radio, film, and television. Her voice measured expressive and unmistakably human, communicated experience without excess. Waters' career unfolded during eras defined by rigid segregation and moral scrutiny. She navigated vaudeville circuits, Harlem Renaissance stages, and Hollywood sets with strategic control, selecting roles that preserved dignity in environments that often denied it. In 1950, she made history as the first Black woman nominated for an Academy Award, signaling progress while revealing how rare such recognition remained. Behind professional milestones, Waters lived with guarded privacy. Romantic relationships with women existed beyond public acknowledgement, a necessity in a time when openness could end careers or invite legal danger. Rather than frame her life through confession, she invested fully in craft, discipline, and longevity. That choice allowed her to endure across decades when many contemporaries faded. As she aged, Waters transitioned towards spiritual music and religious work, reflecting a personal evolution rather than retreat. Health challenges emerged later in life, including uterine cancer, which gradually weakened her. Even so, she maintained public presence, offering performances that emphasized reflection rather than spectacle. Ethel Waters died in 1977 at the age of 80. Her legacy rests on access. She opened doors without theatrics, proving that excellence could carve space where none existed. Waters did not seek to symbolize movements, she sought survival through integrity. In doing so, she expanded what was possible for performers who followed. Remembering her means, acknowledging both the progress she embodied and the restraint she practiced to secure it. Howard Rollins Jr. Howard Rollins Jr. emerged as one of the most compelling actors of his generation. delivering performances marked by intensity and emotional intelligence. His early work garnered critical acclaim, including an Academy Award nomination, positioning him as a rising force in American cinema and television. On screen, Rollins conveyed authority and vulnerability with equal conviction. Yet the demands of rapid success collided with limited support. As opportunities expanded, Rollins struggled with substance dependence, an issue the industry often punished rather than addressed. Professional instability followed, complicating a trajectory that once appeared assured. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, Rollins contracted HFR at a time when public understanding was constrained by fear and stigma. Effective treatments were not yet available, and disclosure carried significant professional risk. Health complications intensified, including recurrent infections that eroded his strength and restricted work. Despite challenges, Rollins continued performing when possible, returning to the screen with determination rather than retreat. However, illness increasingly dictated circumstance. Hospitalizations became frequent, and professional opportunities narrowed as his health declined. Howard Rollins Jr. died in 1996 at the age of 46. His legacy is complex but undeniable. Rollins demonstrated range and depth in roles that demanded both restraint and power. While his career was shortened, his performances remain studied for their honesty and craft. Remembering Rollins requires resisting simplification, recognizing a gifted artist, navigating pressure, vulnerability, and an era ill-equipped to offer care. Together, his work stands as evidence that talent can endure beyond interruption, leaving traces that continue to inform performance long after the curtain falls. Tamara Dobson. Tamara Dobson entered American cinema at a moment when representations of Black women were narrow and often limiting. Trained in fashion design and performance, she carried herself with composure and authority, qualities that translated powerfully on screen. Her breakthrough role as Cleopatra Jones in the early 1970s presented audiences with a rare figure, a Black female lead portrayed as intelligent, capable, and unapologetically in control. Dobson's presence was deliberate rather than flamboyant. She conveyed confidence through posture restraint and clarity of movement, challenging stereotypes without relying on spectacle. The success of her films made her an icon of the blaxploitation era. Yet, she resisted being confined by it. Unlike many contemporaries, Dobson stepped back from acting rather than accept roles that diminished agency. Off-screen, Dobson lived with discretion. She guarded her private life in an industry that rewarded visibility but punished deviation from expectation. That choice reflected a broader reality for performers navigating careers shaped by public perception rather than personal truth. Dobson redirected her focus toward education and mentorship, emphasizing preparation and self-respect over fame. Later in life, serious health challenges emerged. Diagnosed with lung cancer, Dobson faced illness with the same quiet resolve that defined her career. She declined opportunities to re-enter the spotlight, prioritizing dignity over exposure. Her final years were marked by reflection rather than retreat, lived away from cameras and speculation. Tamara Dobson died in 2006 at the age of 59. Her legacy is rooted in representation. She expanded the visual language of strength, offering a model of authority grounded in self-possession. Dobson proved that impact does not require longevity in the spotlight, only intention. Her work remains a reference point for performers seeking to redefine power without compromise. Sahara Davenport. Sahara Davenport-born Antoine Ashley approached drag as an art of refinement rather than exaggeration. Trained in classical dance, he brought precision, balance, and poise to every performance, redefining how elegance could exist within drag culture. When he appeared on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 2, audiences quickly recognized that his strength lay not in spectacle, but in control. Unlike performers who relied on shock or humor, Davenport emphasized line posture and musicality. His background in ballet and modern dance allowed him to move with clarity, transforming the stage into a space of quiet authority. Each performance reflected discipline, built through years of training, positioning him as a bridge between traditional dance and contemporary drag expression. After the show, Davenport continued performing and choreographing, contributing to live productions and mentoring emerging artists. He represented a generation expanding drag beyond nightclub settings, integrating it into broader performance culture. His work demonstrated that drag could hold multiple identities at once: athletic, expressive, and deliberate. Behind the scenes, Davenport faced health challenges that gradually limited his physical capacity. Diagnosed with heart disease, he managed increasing medical complications while remaining engaged with his craft. Even as stamina declined, his commitment to performance remained intact, reflecting a belief that presence mattered as much as endurance. In 2012, Sahara Davenport died at the age of 27. His legacy lies in restraint. He showed that drag did not need to shout to be powerful, and that softness could coexist with strength. Davenport's influence persists through dancers and performers who prioritize technique alongside expression. Remembering him means acknowledging a life that advanced the art form, quietly expanding its possibilities through discipline rather than excess. Essex Hemphill. Essex Hemphill used writing as intervention. As a poet and activist, he articulated realities often excluded from mainstream narratives, focusing on Black gay life with unfiltered clarity. His work emerged during the height of the AIDS crisis, when silence and erasure were as damaging as illness itself. Hemphill's poetry confronted themes of desire, anger, grief, and resilience without softening edges. He rejected abstraction in favor of specificity, naming experiences that demanded recognition. His performances transformed intimate truths into public testimony, challenging audiences to confront discomfort rather than avoid it. Operating largely outside commercial literary spaces, Hemphill became central to Black LGBTQ+ artistic communities in Washington, D.C. and beyond. His collections, including Ceremonies and Conditions, documented a generation navigating loss while insisting on visibility. He did not write from distance, he wrote from within. Diagnosed with HIV, Hemphill continued producing work even as his health deteriorated. Unlike figures shielded by fame, he faced illness without institutional protection, relying instead on creative networks. His later writing carried urgency shaped by time, yet never surrendered precision or intention. In 1995, Essex Hemphill died at the age of 38. His influence extends beyond poetry. Scholars, activists, and artists continue referencing his work as foundational to Black queer literature. Hemphill's legacy rests on insistence on the belief that truth must be recorded even when survival is uncertain. He transformed language into resistance, ensuring that lives often ignored would not vanish without voice. Bobby DeBarge. Bobby DeBarge possessed a voice that carried both sweetness and fragility. As the lead singer of the R&B group Switch, he helped define a smooth, melodic sound that stood apart during the late 1970s and early 1980s. His falsetto delivery was fluid and expressive, conveying intimacy without force. Songs like There'll Never Be and I Call Your Name showcased his ability to communicate longing with remarkable subtlety. Despite commercial success, DeBarge's career unfolded under intense personal pressure. The music industry rewarded his talent, but offered little protection from exploitation or excess. As expectations mounted, he struggled with substance dependence, a challenge that increasingly shaped his professional and personal life. Touring schedules, public visibility, and limited support systems intensified that struggle. DeBarge lived openly as a gay man within certain circles, a reality that placed him at odds with industry norms of the time. Rather than receiving understanding, his openness often compounded isolation. Health concerns emerged alongside addiction, gradually narrowing opportunities and stability. In the early 1990s, DeBarge was diagnosed with HIV during a period when treatment options were still developing and stigma remained severe. As his condition worsened, he continued creating music, when possible channeling emotion into composition rather than public narrative. His later work carried a sense of restraint shaped by experience rather than ambition. Bobby DeBarge died in 1995 at the age of 39 due to AIDS-related complications. His legacy rests in vulnerability. DeBarge demonstrated that emotional openness could define a musical era even when personal circumstances remained unforgiving. His recordings endure as reflections of sensitivity in an industry often defined by control. Remembering Bobby DeBarge means acknowledging both his artistic contribution and the systemic gaps that failed to protect him. Willie Smith. Willie Smith reshaped American fashion by rejecting exclusivity. As the founder of WillieWear, he believed clothing should be expressive, practical, and accessible principles that contrasted sharply with luxury-driven design norms of the early 1980s. His collections combined color movement and everyday functionality, attracting a broad audience across cultural lines. Smith's success was both artistic and commercial. WillieWear became one of the most profitable fashion labels of its time, generating millions in annual revenue and earning international recognition. His work appeared on runways and in museums while remaining wearable in daily life. Smith understood design as communication, using garments to reflect freedom rather than status. Behind professional achievement, Smith navigated a personal reality shaped by discretion. As a gay black designer operating within a competitive industry, he protected his private life to sustain momentum. His focus remained on collaboration, frequently partnering with artists, filmmakers, and performers to expand creative boundaries. In the mid-1980s, Smith contracted HIV, though he was not aware of the diagnosis until later stages. At that time, public understanding of the virus was limited, and effective treatment had not yet emerged. As his health declined, he continued working, completing projects, even as physical strength diminished. Willie Smith died in 1987, at the age of 39, from complications related to AIDS. His impact extends beyond fashion history. Smith pioneered inclusive design philosophies that continue influencing contemporary brands. He demonstrated that success could be built on openness rather than exclusion, and that creativity could serve community as well as commerce. Remembering Willie Smith means recognizing innovation shaped by generosity a vision that arrived ahead of its time. These stories force us to confront difficult questions. Were these lives shortened only by illness or by a world that demanded silence and conformity? How many talents were fully celebrated, yet never fully protected? Progress has been made, but stigma, judgment, and unequal access to care still exist today. Remembering these individuals is not about sorrow alone. It is about responsibility. What lessons have we truly learned, and which ones are we still ignoring? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Join the conversation and keep these legacies alive here on Legends of Black Fame.